Hey everybody, Ty here. Hope everyone's doing well. Video is coming up a little bit later than I'd like for to, and I apologize for that. Hectic times, of course. Taking things one step at a time here, trying to get the washer fixed, and that's really what's been throwing me off as of late. I'm trying to keep the room clean. It gets pretty hectic in here really easily, especially with this stretch that lies ahead here, with the chance of both severe weather and also something that we don't really talk about much here is fire weather. We're actually going to be talking about both of these in particular today. We are also going to be taking a look at the weather pattern ahead here since we're starting a new week here. So, hope everyone's doing well. Of course, make sure you're hitting that like button and that subscribe button. And without further ado, we'll start out with the severe weather side of things first. So, today, haven't really seen a whole lot in the way of severe weather. Today was a marginal risk. Not much has really come of it. There is a pretty broad 2% tornado threat today, along with a 5% wind and hail threat, but not much really has come of it. You can see a little bit of resurgence in activity over here towards eastern parts of Georgia here, heading into the South Carolina area with shower and thunderstorm activity. This is, of course, going to persist into the overnight here, but not really expecting a whole lot in the way of severe weather as far as that's concerned. We get a little bit of a break with severe weather tomorrow for most of the region here. I do think a marginal risk may yet get issued, but like I said, not expecting a whole lot out of either one of those days out of both tonight or tomorrow at this point here. Do have a secondary marginal risk that I feel like I would be remiss to talk about as well. Main threat with this today over towards Montana is mainly a wind threat, but action has not really fired up towards this area yet. We go into day two, as I mentioned before. Widespread thunderstorms possible, especially over towards the deep south, the system that we've been dealing with the last couple of days. Not really expecting any focused area of severe weather as of yet, but by tomorrow, this could, of course, change. It's when we get into day three is where things start to get interesting. We do get our first of 3 slight risk in a row with this as well. This is on Wednesday. I'm expecting this to mostly be a wind and hail threat. Most of these storms will most likely be elevated at this point. No hatch risk for this area as of yet. There could potentially be one on the northern or north central flank of this slight risk here, or we could have maybe an increased hail threat at best. But outside of that, I'm not expecting anything too extreme. But as we all know, there often tends to be outliers with these kinds of events. So if you do end up under a severe thunderstorm warning or maybe even a tornado warning, if and only if that occurs, you still need to make sure that you heed warnings properly here. So we go to days 4 through 8. This is where things start to really ramp up here. As of right now, we've maintained the slight risk over here, and we've noticed a little bit of a shift to the east here for this area in particular. I'm thinking that there is a chance, and I'm not saying that it's a guarantee, there is a chance that maybe we might see an upgrade with this still. Potential is pretty high as many ingredients are in place here. I'm thinking for the most part that this will be mostly a damaging wind event, but I think earlier in the day, and this is where things kind of get complicated for me as far as live streaming is concerned, because I'll most likely still be at work or getting close to done with work during the time where supercells are still expected or are possible at this point here. If the cap breaks and we get some discrete storms, there is a tornado threat that goes along with this, especially as we get further and further into the afternoon and into the evening. Not to mention, I'm kind of booked on Thursday and Friday, unfortunately, so it makes things a little bit more difficult, unfortunately, for me. And then as we go into Friday, we have a subsequent risk that pushes further off to the south. There does, from what I've been seeing off of models here, seem to be a morning event over here towards the Ohio and Mississippi River Valley and Mississippi River Basin region. But I do see a chance for some resurgence with this area as we get later into the afternoon with this as well. So Friday could be another busy day. We'll have to see how things pan out with this as well. So a lot of action ahead here in regards to our severe weather threat here. We're going to take a quick look at the kinematics for the setup here. So this is basically what we have going right now. And this trough here is going to be our troublemaker at this point here. You can see that things start to really amp up as we start to get past the Rockies here. and start to see this trough really become more pronounced as we go forward here. Not a whole lot in the way of forcing here, so there is going to be a lot of issues with capping, especially as we get into the Wednesday thread here. But anything that we can get to sustain itself here, like I said, I'm really thinking the hail threat's going to be high, and there's going to be a notable wind threat with this as well. Might be a little secondary threat that tries to pop up over here towards maybe over towards New Mexico and Southwest Texas as well before all is said and done. But I don't expect that to be a long-lasting event. It's really when we get into Thursday where my interest really peaks. We start to see a little secondary feature that pops up over here towards the south, and these two kind of split off a little bit. And I've seen this look before on some of these stronger wind events that I've seen in years past here. Doesn't guarantee that that's going to end up being the case here, but it's like a little gradient might try to form here. And if it does and conditions fall into play at the right time here, I would expect potentially even a bow echo, maybe even the quote-unquote D word here. Not going to put too much speculation into that, but it seems like with all the parameters in place, I wouldn't go as far as to say that that's out of the question. But like I said, it's really going to come down to the last minute as to what ingredients we have available at that moment in time when these storms start to fire. But from what I've been seeing on the most recent trends here, we've seen a little bit of a shift in timing as well. So that could be, like I said, I really think this is going to be one of those situations where it comes down to the wire. Getting into Friday, you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. There's a pretty clear case of diffluence over here, over towards the Tennessee-Kentucky line here, particularly towards Tennessee, where I would expect the line of storms to develop overnight and into the early morning hours of Friday. We'll watch that clear out, and then we eventually get some resurgence a little bit north of that area of interest right here by the time we get into Friday evening. So could be a 1-2 event here for Friday possibly if this does indeed verify. There could be a subsequent threat also on Saturday, but by this point the upper levels of the atmosphere kind of downtrend from this point, and I would go as far as to say that things would begin to kind of taper off from that point. Then our attention shifts towards this trough here to end the 7-day period, and then from this point the northern plains and the western high plains become the point of interest as we get towards the 18th, 19th, and 20th. The 19th and 20th in particular seem like the most interesting days so far. Obviously, being so far out of range, I'm not going to hype these up or anything, but looking at the profile of this trough here is definitely something that's piquing my interest, especially in the higher levels of the atmosphere. And I'll show you the lower levels as well before we move forward here. But in either case, it does look like that we may have a more notable event possibly for the start of next week here. That's something I can guarantee that I will be live for, or at least I hope so. Things have been hectic around here lately. This does progress off to the east based off the GFS run here, and then maybe over towards the Midwest and Ohio Valley we could even get action towards the end of next week as well. So like I said, it looks like we're still in for a pretty active stretch, potentially to even end out the month here. At the very end of this model run, you can actually see a couple other troughs maybe coming into play here as well. So it looks like May is going to live up to expectation here in regards to severe weather potential possibly. The hazards are still in question at this point, especially the further out in the range we go. But some pretty clear signals that I've been seeing across the board here nonetheless. Now, looking at the mid-levels of the atmosphere, at this point we're mainly looking for short waves and troughs, of course, with this one. With the 14th coming into the 15th, not much to really be had there, but watch what happens as we get later into the afternoon for the 15th here. See a pretty clear shortwave trough beginning to pop up in the early afternoon hours, and like I said, this is really where I think our initiation time would occur. Things become a little bit more pronounced, especially with the southern mode on this, as we get later into the evening. The shortwaves themselves, as far as amplitude is concerned, is not all that impressive though, so like I said, this is one of those little incidental things that we won't really have a clear picture of until we get to the day of. If this downtrends, then we'll probably stay at a slight risk or maybe even fall below that. But if it does uptrend here, which if we were to go to the euro here, for example, then we would have a increased risk, maybe a enhanced risk or higher here. It's kind of been the tail between two models, so to speak here. Let me actually go back to the euro here. Okay, let's try this again because I thought I had it on the other screen. Apparently it's not working. Oh, also this is the beta mode, so I'm kind of new to this. Euro has a slightly better shortwave here. Nothing that I'm all that impressed by at this point. So like I said, a lot more questions still left to be had with this storm system than I have answers, unfortunately. So a little bit of a pain there trying to figure out exactly what's ahead here. Really looking forward to seeing what kind of model data we have available from the regional to convective model range, which is about maybe a day or two from now. So keep the ball rolling here. Like I said, we'll see a pretty similar look on Friday here. We have an early morning event, and then we go to the tail end. We see Friday evening, we have another mode here. We also have more activity here towards the East Coast here, especially towards the Carolinas as well. Our new trough comes in, pretty similar deal. Really good signal in particular on the 19th that I'm paying extra close attention to, along with the 20th at this point. I've been seeing this for the last few runs here, so my interest is kind of peaked with this, but we'll have to continue to watch for further trends going forward here. One thing that I have noticed in either case, though, is a lot of our severe storms that I would say are likely or possible at this point seem to be happening over a lot of the same areas. So flooding is another concern to be had here. So we're going to also go ahead and take a quick look at that low-level jet and try to keep things moving from that point. And it, like I said, it's really towards the latter half of the afternoon here where it looks like our low-level jet really peaks at this point. But some of these areas a little bit further off towards the southwest of our slight risk for Thursday here are what kind of interests me in that early tornado threat. If we can get some supercells to emerge here, especially along that quad state corridor like we've had in previous time. Eventually we'll see that kind of taper off. We see a little secondary area pop up, and we see a couple areas of interest here as well. Daggone it. I hate seeing these kinds of setups and then I'm booked with stuff to do. It's not that I'm not looking forward to what I have to do from Wednesday through Friday. It's just daggone it. I hate missing streams. But then here is our setup for the 19th. Very sufficient low-level jet over here. So, like I said, we definitely want to pay extra close attention to the 19th, heading into the 20th. And then beyond that point, the train just continues to roll from that point. I mean, not much more really to be said at this point other than looks like some very busy times are ahead for us. So, looking at our dew points here, our moisture return is more than sufficient enough pretty much throughout this entire stretch in regards to our severe weather areas. If you're anywhere to the east of the Rockies at some point, you're going to be dealing with dew points at times getting to 50 to 60 degrees. And this is where we start to get to the other side of things, where we talk a little bit less about severe weather and we start to talk about the chance of some fire weather over here, or wildfire danger here. These areas where we see the gradient here, where we're at those 50, 60 degree dew points, if we drop back behind this a little bit, you see 17, 15, 16 degree dew points, very dry air. And with exceptionally warm temperatures to go along with that, that's going to help increase that fire threat over not just the southwest here, but further up towards the north as well. The relative humidity and the surface temperatures being as high as they are in typically is going to cause a little bit of issue. But also, just in general, just those lower humidities as a whole will often increase that fire threat. There are some critical fire outlooks as well. Here's one today, and this is over towards the northern states where we have a pretty broad critical area here in the red, stretching all the way from northern parts of Nebraska all the way up into parts of Minnesota here and the Dakotas as well. Then here's our elevated risk over here towards the southwest. You start to see an uptrend in both of these areas, but once again, this area up towards the north is a little bit more variable, the temperatures being a little bit lower. Over here towards the southwest where we have the 90s plus those low dew points and relative humidities, which I'll show you in just a little bit here, this is going to help keep that fire threat elevated to critical over towards the southwest. We also have a day 3 risk where we have a 70% chance of low relative humidity, wind, and maybe even a couple of dry thunderstorms possible as well. So overall, we have a pretty high confidence in fire danger over here. We're still questionable over towards the northern states, but we'll probably see some fire weather warnings issued most likely over towards the Dakotas as we continue to progress throughout the week here. So here's a look at those relative humidities. Over here towards the green, those are our higher humidity, relative humidities. Low relative humidities are going to be over towards this region. I'd say anything that's below 30% usually is a red flag here. And look at how low we pretty much end up being throughout the entire model run here. There's really not too much of a reprieve throughout the first half of the run. It's really not until we get towards the back half where we start to see a little bit of an increase in humidity, which will help take down some of that fire threat as a whole here going forward. But it's a long stretch where we need to be extra cautious here. The main goal here is to ensure that you don't end up, let's say, burning anything unnecessarily. Don't leave your car sitting in an area for too long, or especially avoid dry vegetation in particular. And that's really the best course of action to help avoid forest fires. Don't make me have to be like Smokey. Anyway, though, back to the severe weather side of things. Instability is not going to be a problem over these next few days. As we get from the 14th all the way through the weekend here. 15th is another reason. This is another reason why the 15th here kind of piques my interest here, because we have instability levels or CAPE readings that are getting close to 5,000 joules per kilogram here. And keep in mind, the global models, which have been doing a really good job this year, have historically been known to downplay CAPE. So this actually may yet be higher than what's being forecasted here. So another thing to kind of keep in mind. Still have plenty of instability on Friday too, which is really impressive, might I add. Then we still have to watch for Saturday over here towards Oklahoma and Texas going forward here. So long weekend of weather ahead here, possibly. Severe weather and potentially wildfire potential is high. Even as we go further into range towards the 19th into the 20th here, there is a lot of instability already being picked up here. I have to say again, the global models as of late have been doing a great job with picking up instability much further in advance than in previous times. This is probably some of the best work that I've seen, and I'm hoping that we can continue to see that progression as we go forward here. That definitely helps us hone in on severe weather potential much sooner. Even though, of course, there's no true guarantees, it definitely helps. And there's even a pretty strong signal towards the 22nd that we'll need to keep an eye on as well. Like I said, if we go 10 days and beyond here, the train just keeps rolling, truthfully. So a lot to keep track of as we go forward here. Multiple areas where we're seeing over 1,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE. It's not uncommon to see that during the summertime due to the fact that, well, the increased surface temperature, and if you get any solid dew points, just a little bit of forcing, you usually will have better instability. It's not always a given, but more often than not, there's a correlation between those 2 to 3 parameters here. So last but not least, we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at the precip type throughout the weekend here. Really, at this point, we're just looking at rainfall here. As we know, severe weather is going to pretty much be reigning supreme. Snowfall is going to be kind of few and far in between unless you're up towards the Rockies here and over towards Canada. But you can see, I'm going to make sure that we can see everything here. We're going to go to Wednesday here, which is our first day of severe weather potential. Not a whole lot going on there. There's a little something that kind of pops up late in the evening. And then from that point, this is where business kind of picks up a bit. GFS hasn't been doing a great job of picking up on this versus the Euro in regards to its storm potential. If I were to switch over to the Euro, you'd see it a little bit better. Okay, so here is the Euro, and even then this is kind of struggling with it too. There was a little bit more of a pronounced picture with this as well, showing a line of storms if we were to go back maybe 2 or 3 model runs ago. So like I said, a lot of uncertainty still left to be had with the Thursday setup. Friday is a little bit more pronounced. There is a very clear sign of a strong bow echo that pops up Friday evening. So if you're anywhere over towards northern parts of Arkansas into northwest Tennessee here into western Kentucky, you may need to be watchful of that. And there might be also some clusters where even maybe a supercell or two could be possible as well going forward. So like I said, looks like a long weekend of weather lies ahead here. Alright, so I'm going to go back to GFS here. GFS kind of shows a pretty similar picture of the Euro on Friday. I'm just really surprised why we're struggling with Thursday as much here. There's a couple questions we had there, of course, but from all the other parameters that I've seen up to this point, Thursday still looks like it could be pretty active as well. Saturday looks a little bit slower, than looks like we're back to the grind on Sunday here, with storms expected later into the evening. And then from that point, like I said, 19th into the 20th, the train really starts to roll again here. So could be a pretty long stretch here for shower and storm activity as a whole here, and severe weather potential as well. So definitely need to make sure that you are staying tuned, staying locked in. If you are in an area of interest, especially if you're in Tornado Alley, this is nothing new for you guys. Just make sure you're heeding those watches and warnings. With that being said, though, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to get out of here and tend to my clothes once again. I hope you guys take care of each other. Stay tuned. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, and that share button as well. And I will see you with another one tomorrow. Until then, take care and have a wonderful rest of your night.